Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the PM Learning Series. As many of you know, it's a series of live streaming events where industry thought leaders and product practitioners share their PM career journeys, as well as lessons learned to inspire aspiring and current PM and product builders like you to level up your product game and your product career. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, which you can find the link in the event details tab to receive key takeaways from today's event, as well as future event updates. So, as some of you know, that we're launching a special series where we interview people from working in AI and from leading generative AI companies to understand more about this technology. So today we're having a very special guest, and we also have a very special format in how we're going to do today's session. So let me bring him up to the stream. Hello, Mahesh.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, Shivi.
This is awesome. So we have a very important class today where you'll give us a mini lecture about one of the most exciting topic about enterprise large language models. But before that, you are a leader that has been spearleading a lot of transformative AI initiatives at some of the best companies, tech companies in the world, right? Right now, you're working as a technical PM at AWS, but previously you're working at Meta, you work at Microsoft. So you have really seen it all, in my opinion, of like the evolution of AI over the past few decades. So without further ado, maybe let's do a quick intro. I give you the resume version, but it would be helpful to maybe talk a little bit about what sparked your interest at working in large language model. And then I knew that previously you told me that you had this cohort where you have over 100 PMs that have trained in like the AI MML space. So what are some of the common challenges that you've seen for PM trying to work in this space? Tell us more.
Yeah, no, thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity, Shivi. This is a big platform for us to talk about and helping others to getting onboarded to machine learning and AI. Mahesh, part of this machine learning and AI, as Shivi was talking about since 2016. I started my overall like 17 years, but for last 7 or 8 years in machine learning and AI. I started at Microsoft, where I was working with building machine learning and AI for IoT. I also built a vision AI dev kit, which allowed people to take few images from the camera, build a model with no code, deploy it, extended it by building a video analytics pipeline where you can take any open source model and process like 100 of camera streams. And then I moved to Facebook, where I was part of PyTorch, working on large language models. How can we train them with APIs like fully sharded data parallel, distributed data parallel? Because as you learn, these are very big models and they require thousands and thousands of GPUs. So how can you do all reduce, gather all operations seamlessly? So that was my avenue. And then since last 1 year or so, I'm working here at AWS, where I was part of Comprehend team, where we were figuring out how to use these large language model and build services like content moderation, which we just released. So that's what I have done. Most exciting thing for this panel or this discussion is last year I started teaching PMs how to get into machine learning and AI with PM exercises. We are on our fourth cohort now, and we meet every Saturday also of our free session. And here I am helping PMs know like the concepts and also the applications of how to build products. And it's been an exciting journey. So that's the first part. The second part is like, what are the challenges people face when they try to switch from, product management to machine learning and AI based products? So three main challenges, right? Once people don't understand the concepts, like it's just a stack that you need to understand. Like what are the chips, why AI chips are important. AI chips are a little different than your CPUs. So how frameworks like PyTorch or TensorFlow allows you to harness the power of these chips with simple code. So that layer on top of it. And then on top of that, you have AI services, like people just use simple APIs from which can give you text to speech or speech to text. And then on top of that, there is this new way of doing things with large language models, that rather than having 20 AI services, you can just have one large language model do all of this, and you need not to deal with a lot of data because it's trained on a lot of data. So these kind of concepts people miss, and they don't have the full stack knowledge. So they struggle with like the technical interview, or knowing the technical challenges, or not planning ahead for technical concepts or technical challenges that they fall through. So that's, I think, I've seen biggest challenge, at least in our cohort. And second is like building these products is a little different, because building an MVP is really quick, because you start with the work of a large language model provider, like people talk about these GPT wrappers and all. So building something of value or solving the first problem is really fast. So you need to plan that in your roadmap. But after that, how are you going to put guardrails around responsible AI? How are you going to think through fine tuning your model? How are you going to make sure that your prompts are reproducible, or you have versioning of your prompts? And I will talk about like what prompts are and all this. But and the last thing is like these models do hallucinate. You know that, you and me have discussed it. So you can't have that. You are putting these in, let's say you are a law firm and you are selling to a law firm a product, and you can't say that, half of the time, don't worry, in your citation you will be wrong, right? Who cares? That will be a death for that lawyer or that law firm in together. So for enterprises and for product managers to think through these things is challenging, and I think that's the mission I'm on, to solve those, or help
That's
more and
really
more people
exciting.
on board
So
to ML and AI.
yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today, right? All of these $1 million questions, how we're going to crack it. What's the mental model? But before we get there, I just want to say hi to everybody who's joining the streaming right now. Please introduce yourself, where you're joining from. And if you have any question from Hash, feel free to drop them in the chat. He's going to actually respond it to you via comment. So make sure you drop the question, and yeah, we'll get it. We'll get them answered. So Mahesh, let's take a little bit of a step back to set the context, and then we can go into the lecture portion. Maybe you can show us the building blocks as we were talking about. But AI and machine learning is actually a very old phenomenon. I read an article, it's like 80 plus years old, right? Like there's like couple AI winters that's happening. And then a lot of things, like what's changed this time, like with ChatGPT coming out, making the magic, putting a face on that magic, right? What's creating all this excitement? Is it hype or reality? What's your take on that?
Oh, that's a very good question, right? So I've seen it like kind of all when we started offering like first AI services from cloud providers at Microsoft, and then like how PyTorch became this framework of choice for developers, and then now like people are just on board. Everybody's just crazy. Like every company wants to get into some kind of AI roadmap. So I think what changed is like three things, right? One is that before, when we were looking at AI services, like speech to speech translation, or language translations, or vision based object detection, we were trying, the use case was a little different. The use case was go for higher accuracy, and we were targeting full automation with them. Okay, you were used to hire 3 people to guard your building. Now you put security cameras. Here are machine learning models which can give you notifications. Okay, you used to hire people to write your manuals in 20 languages. Here is our API. Now you can use it to convert it into 20 languages, and it will be highly accurate. But the challenge of that is that there are very few narrow use cases where AI can actually solve things with 100% kind of end, or better than human accuracy. Second, when you go after these things, you are also competing with humans, and especially with internet, outsourced workforce is not that hard to get. And it's always like you're trying to compete with people, and that's doesn't appeal to a lot of, you have a stoppage point after like few geographies you will have adoption, but beyond that you will not get adopted. So like for an example, like take the connected car use case, right? Or this autonomous car use case. We are hearing it for 15 years. It's still going on. It's really like so much. I think some $1 trillion has been spent on getting things right there, but still it's not right. So the bar of accuracy is higher. What GPTs were there before like Chat GPT, but I think what OpenAI was able to do with Chat GPT is they were able to say that, hey, two things they're amazingly different. One is how you interact with them. Earlier, you still need to write Python code. You still need to do like pre-processing. You still need to figure out the format of image and convert it into that model talks to you. They put a wrapper around it and they said, you know, you don't use the model, you prompt the model. And how you prompt the model? By natural language. You just ask them questions, or you ask them to assume a role and then act like it. So that interface, which is so human like, which we are so used to, has created new imaginations in people and new use cases that never existed, like all this 80 years that you were talking about. This is just like now I have a human and I can make them act in like 20 different ways or prompt them in different ways and get different kind of jobs done by a single model. So that I think is super uh, super powerful attribute of these large language models. And second is how they position themselves. So the customer persona has changed. They're not going after that security guard or this linguistic who were just trying to translate. They are saying that, hey, we're going to make the highly paid professionals more efficient, and we are not offering highest accuracy. So it's no more the accuracy, it's how can I help you write a better book, a software engineer write faster code, how can we generate images at almost zero cost, 100 of them for a marketing campaign, and then you can choose or tweak them rather than just building it from scratch. And that these two things combined, like a lower human interface, and where we can just go and do things with not with higher accuracy, but enhance the performance of highly paid professionals like software engineers, uh, product managers who write a lot, and lawyers who need to process a lot of things like in a document. If you can just help them with the first draft by keeping human in loop, the whole segment was so narrow. Now it's broadened to every industry, every player, and it is becoming part of your tech stack. Like internet was, mobile was. Now every company has to think through where AI fits in. And that I think is the real excitement from this hype that more and more enterprises are getting transferred into.
Yeah, I definitely resonated with that. I love the be able to democratize, expertise, but with the less focus on accuracy, but more on the fluency of able to generate like a draft, for example, right, for people to react to, and then also the notion of like just bringing a face to this magic. A lot of times, historically, in the past 8 decades of AI, it's all under the hood. This magic somehow happened. Like Netflix knows what you like, and then but you don't know what goes into it. Sometimes it gives you a random result and you're like, why? I love this, like putting a face on top of it. um,
Yeah.
you mentioned a little bit about tech stack. So you work with a lot of customers at AWS, right, with enterprise customers. Tell us a little bit about that. And then with that also, again, the community, thanks for joining us today. Please drop in the chat, introduce yourself, and any question you might have for Mahesh. He's going to join and respond directly to your comment via comments. So make sure you left your question in the chat.
No, thank you. Like I'm helping a lot of I was helping nonprofits to move into cloud and AI through my personal company, and I'm also helping new startups. And obviously, a lot of enterprise use cases through working at Azure, Facebook. We were helping like IBM and Salesforce to get into like PyTorch and how can they take things to PyTorch, and again like AWS. So mostly like what enterprises need to do, right? They're looking like the journey is like threefolds, and I will use my board now. So first, you take this large language model. Let's call it anything, right? Let's call it an LLM. We have like Anthropic LLMs or GPTs. You are aware of those. So let's call them large language models called LLMs, right? So now you can just, as a user, you can ask them to do things. You can give them a document and say summarize, and they give you, so you say document and your prompt, which is nothing but a natural language saying, hey, summarize this contract for me. right? So this is your first use case. This is where everybody starts, the bare minimum basic. You write prompts, that's all you have to do, and you supply your documents or your data. And you get results, and now your users, you can build apps like that. Few examples, like you've seen Notion.ai. Notion.ai now allows people to now get a first draft of writing. So what you can do is you can write your content in Notion by just saying, hey, AI, give me the first draft. What they are doing is they're taking what you have done before, passing that as their prompt, your document, and saying, hey, if you have to rewrite a new article with this header, please write the first 20 lines. And whatever response this give, you get as a user of Notion AI. More simple example of this is flowers.ai. For Mother's Day, what they did is that they started giving you a clause and said, hey, when you are sending flowers to your mom, do you want to attach a poem? And if you said yes, they took your context, your age, and your mother's geographic locations, created a prompt, got a poem, and attach it to your message with your flowers. So these are like the most simple use case. And people actually are going to production with this simple use case as well. But then the second use case is when you go and say, hey, I have not one document and I just don't want you to write poem in like my thing. I have a bunch of things with me. So now this is your model again, same model, same large language model. And you want to send it lot of information, but it cannot process. That's your first problem. You start hitting enterprise use cases is context is limited. What does that mean is what can you send to LLMs is limited by the length of your tokens or the words. And today that limit is 4K for Llama models. Llama is a popular model by Facebook or Meta. And it was 36K for GPT-4. With recent announcement, it's 128K. And for Claude, it's 100K. Just in simple like English or simplify, this is like 10 pages. You can just take this as 90 pages, best case effort, and then you continue to multiply. But maximum it could address is like 200 pages, and this can go up to 200 to 300 pages is maximum they can process. Beyond that, if you ask them a question, they're going to give you a wrong answer, but they're super confident when they give you that wrong answer. This process is called model is hallucinating, so that it's coming up with information that you have not provided or it doesn't have, and that information is not correct. And that is a big blocker for enterprise. How they solve it is they create something called a vector store, and they store all their documents here. So this is the second pattern or the second information that handles the first problem of context. And what they do is they create a vector store, and here they put all their document, not 500 pages, but 5,000 pages, or all like 10,000 pages of documents. And now when you send a request, it goes to the vector store. It gets you only relevant information, whatever your LLM can process, only like 50 pages or 500 pages, 200 pages that are relevant with your question or prompt. And now you're building this end-to-end solution, which is super accurate and popular. The third thing you want to do, an enterprise, is that you would like to have something very, very specific to your own company. So you have a lot of data and you want this model to be very accurate. So what you do is you create your custom LLM. So you train it with your own data. So you bring your own data and you train it with existing LLM to make a custom LLM. This is your IP. This will be highly accurate for your personal use cases. And then you combine this with another vector store. And That's pretty much all you need, right? Obviously, there is like privacy, security, and all, and there are a lot of challenges in the implementing these in production. But these are the major patterns you will see when enterprise are going to production using these models.
This is a great foundational 101 to like lay out a couple elements. Let's double click, Mahesh. Start maybe from enterprise data, the context size. So a vector DB will help solve that. But what are some of the typical challenges that you've seen as companies try to commercialize it when it comes to like business applications?
Yeah, no, I think the find like earlier, right, we were talking about that like 10 year journey and higher accuracy bar. Even the accuracy bar for these use cases, like when you're trying to create a poem or you're trying to create the first draft or you're trying to create a summarization, especially in this case, when you're looking at fine tuning your data, you're looking for clean data. And that's where the biggest blocker is. But right now, the advantage you get is that you start from this stage and you have gone through a lot of prompt and responses, and you keep users here to correct those. So whatever response you get, so you send a prompt, you get a response. So let's say you send a question, you get an answer. You keep a repository of these, and that's become your first data set. But without that, most of the organizations struggle to have clean data, which is actually useful to build a highly accurate or even the right accuracy model. That's the first challenge I've seen. Second challenge is like, even if you have the data, putting all the data processing pipeline is not a trivial job. And third is like, where to focus on that data, because all your data is not useful. There are only few features that you need to figure out that have an impact on your model. So those features you still need to find, you still need to do feature engineering. But I think using LLMs to even like clean the data, creating the right data set and doing feature engineering is working, at least in first MVP use cases, and helping people move faster in enterprise. That's my experience there.
Right. I want to create sort of a hot take scenario to ask you, if you will. So some speakers I spoke to said like, "Oh, data is this moats, this like IP that companies the biggest, the most valuable asset." Whereas some people believe that over time, even data can be proprietary. Even proprietary data could be commoditized in some circumstances because legal industry, like how much can you you can see certain trends and have vertical models that specialize in that and make the data set commoditized. What's your take in that in the enterprise context?
No, I think very good question, right? So I think there are two patterns, right? There, like before, like if you talk about before 2022 or before GPT, the challenge was that there was no large model which can actually generate data for you. So if you don't have data, it's a showstopper. You can't go anywhere. So that's one. So I completely agree with the school which says that, hey, if you don't have data, that's your moat. If you don't have clean data, I would say you don't have a moat, or you can't build AI or have a differentiation project. Like we were talking about this custom LLM here. You can't build that unless you have this custom clean data which can be fed into. And most companies don't have this custom cleaned data. That's the beginning. So that's the world. The second thing the second school you're talking about, I think what they are talking about is that this idea that first time we have this large language model, which is trained on almost every book, every internet, uh, every SEC filing, every court case out there for lawyers. So you can prompt it to generate that kind of data that you are looking for. Or you can create the first data sets that you need to create applications. So that that advantage allows you to say that, hey, maybe there is a disruption coming. Second thing, what has happened is since last 10 years, because of machine learning and AI, a lot of data sets have become public, especially from the government, like SEC website in the lawyer example that we are leading with, published every company 10K forms. The court in every county publishes all the cases, what are their judgments. So you can start there. And now, first time you have these processing engines through the large language models, you can dump this data and say, hey, give me into this FAQ section, create an FAQ like this, and it just takes that data, continues to do that. So that I think is possible. So I think the jury is still out. I see both the worlds. So if you still have data right now, you still have a bigger moat, but the disruption is coming because people can start with public data, and using with an LLM to clean it is much more faster than what you have to do without LLMs before. Or LLMs can be used to generate the first draft, and then you can have this loop in your product, right? That you start with a very small use case of a very small application, and then as you start getting your Q&A, you start storing these, and this becomes your first data pipeline or your first data storage. When you go into custom LLM, you can use this data to create this, and as more and more people start using your product, this data, like one hair is your this hair, and now you can actually start creating data while you are deploying or adding value to your customers. That did not existed before. It was never easy to train models by just saying, prompt response. That kind of training is available today. So I resonate with your second pair of users as well.
So yeah, definitely. So just to recap, you're saying that AI for the first time, for example, could actually generate synthetic data to help train the model, right? Second is whatever the input, the interaction, the user feedback, the responses that you get, those are actually become the more valuable data set unique to you that you can use to continue to fine tune your custom LLM.
Correct.
So besides data set, I think the other aspect in this whole enterprise LLM is prompting, right? How do you interact with this model? And I heard all thoughts of like people telling me, hey, you need every time if there's an upgrade in the AI model, the old prompt might not work, or even if you just change a tiny bit, you never know what's going to come out. So what are some best practices if prompt is one of the major lever in how you can interact with the LLM? What are some challenges, best practices? How do you manage prompt engineering in a
No,
smart
I
way,
think you
especially a
brought a very
startup?
good point, right? So prompts are the new code for dealing with large language models. Now, with code, you version the code. So if you are prompting ChatGPT, it gave you one response, you copy pasted, you modified it, you send the email, you're done. Enterprises are not done that way. If you produced, let's say you used an LLM to process somebody's loan application and you denied that loan application based on obviously the right data that you fed through these channels, and it made the application and it also told you why it's making the decision, those prompts work. But as you're saying, as you go into a new world, this version changes, or you keep iterating on your prompts, and in 3 months some law department sues you and says, hey, you rejected wrong people loans, explain how you came to this judgment. You need to have reproducibility. You need to have some kind of way to go back to that state. That doesn't exist anymore. Your prompts are behaving differently, your results are coming very differently, and now what are you going to produce in the code? So that's why, right, this idea. Second thing challenge there is these prompts are really brittle, or like a small slight change in a prompt can give you a very, very different outcome. That's not what used to happen with your code, because your code was like always like ballpark here or there. But a small change can make your whole thing go, as you were pointing, right? If I this model changes, or if I slightly modify my prompt for one use case, it start impacting the other use cases very, very badly. So everything else goes to toss. And how will you test it? So versioning your prompts, how to ensure that you can evaluate the whenever you change a prompt, you can evaluate it across all your use cases, across very different kind of metrics, like is it truthful, is it cohesive, is it doing the similarity right? So putting those new benchmarking places, versioning your prompts, and then looking at how you have this reproducibility engine, so that if when you are going to production, like in enterprise setup, you can go back and produce those results and build your case. So these are like whole new way where a lot of tools are coming in. And to solve these problems, I would highly recommend uh, you know using prompt versioning. That's what like most of the enterprise cloud providers are offering these days. So going with them, that allows you to version your prompts. that allows you to evaluate your prompts and get into production with a lot of assurance that this not only gives me benefits here, but also gives me benefits for all my users and not just few. And then have some example prompts, right? They have templates that how can one team can iterate on these prompts, but can be shared all across your organization. So those are the things that you should be building or using.
Absolutely. I also like two other, I guess, points from working with other PMs working in this space is that first is just embrace this uncertainty, this improvisation, and then second, you sort of also mentioned about the success criteria, just like having a way to evaluate the evaluation criteria of like what would be a great response, and then every time you upgrade the prompt, like having a way to know, oh, okay, is, like what are some dimensions and different use cases that you need to evaluate. Now, Mahesh, another hot take. Also, by the way, for those who are joining, please introduce yourself. Drop in the chat if you have a question for Mahesh. He's going to respond in comments from time to time. So make sure you get your questions in so that you get a response from him. Now, in the earlier at the beginning of the session, you mentioned about the challenge around GPU, TPUs, like the computing cost around some of those large language model. And just case in point, actually, I remember reading an article earlier this year where Microsoft Copilot, for example, cost people $10 to subscribe to the service. But since people use it so much, it actually costs anywhere between 20 to $30 to service those users. And if you're a power user, it might cost more than $80 to service one user. So the economic use case with the current sort of computation resource challenge and limitation sometimes don't necessarily work out a positive ROI. Especially for startups, maybe large company have like existing revenue, stream that can sort of compensate those costs. So how do company, when it comes to enterprise LLM use cases, what are some ideas that you think about, working with the shortage of chips and like just the computation resource intensity and how to reduce that cost and what to think about it?
No, I think this is a very, very hot topic you're bringing in. Like when you start getting into production, right? So, yes, you can practice all these things for free. They're available everywhere these days, and you can get started. But as you start going into production, every query on a large language model is a cost to you. Taking like example of our contract example, just looking at like what's the cost of the largest language model out there, you're just looking at cost of a 200-page document was costing one of the startups that I was working with $5 to process, just one, right? So if you're doing testing and if you're put a site and say, hey, here you go, just try it out, because if you're a new startup, you want people to use your services. Every user just trying their first contract and trying to create an abstract of 10 useful things in this contract will cost you $5 or so. So that's one. Second is, as you start using more and more of these LLMs and these services, they have limits on it. These are not unlimited because they run on huge chips infrastructure. So this is like thousand and thousand of chips that they need, like a cluster of 124 GPUs. NVIDIA and other players can't make these enough. So they have to restrict you. So and every LLM provider out there restricts tokens per minute or request per minute, TPM and RPM limits. So you can't send more than 5 requests per minute or 50 requests per minute, or let's say 100K requests per minute. So how will you ensure in this world that you have the right limits once your customers grow? So you build this awesome now contract service, you are rocking, and every layer is coming here, but you have these limits, and beyond these limits, they will throttle you. So your users won't be able to hit the service. So how to plan for that? That's the second big problem. So first is obviously how to find the cost dynamics. Second is how to find the right level of RPMs, or how to host these services. And third aspect of just the cost angle, or like looking at what the challenges on these large language models is, that you still need to manage a retrain model. If you need to host, if you configure this model as a custom model, you need to pay for it all the time. So these are like per usage, pay per usage. But this, you need to host, and hosting that requires large amount of GPUs, let's say. And this is a cost that you need to sign up. And this is the second case that you don't get users, you're still paying for this. So here are my advices on how to solve each one of these. So first one, I think find the right use case. In this case, like if you're offering a lawyer and assistance, uh, lawyers charge anywhere like $200 to $500 to process, or hourly charges to do this kind of abstract. Although it takes $5, you have like use those high-end use cases, and you still have an ROI. Even if like 50 people or 100 people try this, that's the cost of one. And if your conversion is one, still you have a value proposition. So go for high-end use cases when you are going for LLMs. Otherwise, look for small models which cost you less. So if you're going for the most highest accuracy and a wider reach, this plan works in the beginning. Then come up with your roadmap of dividing into smaller specialized models, which cost you less, and routing your workloads accordingly. So that's first problem, and like two solutions there. The second one is, again, right, work with your cloud providers. Make sure you have your projections. Make sure they also give you like dedicated units. So make sure when you are building a right product for your enterprise, you have that beforehand, because it might take you like 90 days to 120 days to get those assured resources. So make sure as you continue to grow your user base, you have a plan to acquire more hardware, either internally or externally. So that's one. And second is finding your workloads and dividing them on which one stick and which one doesn't stick would be the second thing that you want to have here. And the third one is, don't go to custom LLMs. Don't spend too much time building the most accurate, the best model unless you start having users. So start here, don't go here unless you have really good user base, which is complaining about accuracy, so that you are avoiding upfront cost before the use cases actually show up. Because this space is iterating so fast that if you build something custom, the new version of this may be already better than this. So do not spend money creating your custom LLMs unless you have one use case nailed down.
I like that. I think it's interesting that you sort of focus this is on value-based pricing, right? Like making sure, hey, your funnel will work out the math that more than like a human replacement. So focusing on like delivering the value and rather than like try to come up with like a cost-based pricing. So we mentioned one of the big challenges that LLMs, that especially in the enterprise context, the worry around hallucination. Especially if you're incumbent, like a big company like AWS or Meta or Microsoft, the companies that you work with, there's an associated like brand perception risk that comes with, like, what if the LLM hallucinates? What are some tactics that you use to kind of mitigate hallucination from maybe like better prompt engineering or better feedback collection? What are some specific tips that you have for mitigating hallucination when working with enterprise LLM?
Yeah, I think it's a deathbed for anything LLM for enterprise if you continue to hallucinate as you are doing in public. So one thing is ground them with your own data and ask in your prompts that only use this data. So this is how everybody's going after. They're not going after what LLM is trained for. They're going after grounding them or giving them the context of their organization. So these prompts, they are saying, hey, only use the information that I'm providing. Second, put checks that, hey, make sure before you deploy them, you have your tests or guardrails around your models that make sure that they have never hallucinated or have not produced anything wrong. So go after those things. And then the third thing is retraining these LLMs to your specific use case, like creating those custom LLMs. That's how enterprise is going after removing the last bit of wrong. We call them like not accurate LLMs, but you ensure that these are producing right answers. And then, so first, add a vector database, improve your prompts. Second, put checks. And third, retrain this model on your company data to make it super accurate and not hallucinate. That's what it takes. And that's what the companies are going step by step. First, they go directly by doing prompt engineering. Second, they give them context by helping their own uh, context and own information and only restrict the answers using this information. Third, they start putting checks and guardrails. And fourth, they go and buy or train or hire somebody to build more accurate LLMs, which are only trained on their data by doing pre training or post training on their use cases.
Right. So thank you again. And for folks who are joining, again, please drop your chat question in the comments, and Mahesh will respond. As a response to your chat. Now we're almost coming up on time. So Mahesh, I have two more questions for you. One is looking ahead. Are we basically only scratching the surface of this tech for LLM, or what are some of the most exciting opportunities as you're thinking about commercializing LLMs in the enterprise space?
Yeah, no, I think we are just at a very, very beginning of possibilities. As you see, right, the challenges are so hard, right? Changing a prompt changes a lot of things. You have to manage prompts. There is no tools out there. Second, we got one or few large language model which are so generic that they don't meet like any specific need. But if you look at like the progress we have done in last 1 year and the use cases that we have seen ROI or value proposition already, I'm saying we are like at zero point 0.1 stage. And the future I'm looking at is what we have seen recently is agents, right? So right now you give this prompt and it does one thing. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer. But your company's use cases is very different. You are trying to add a firewall policy for a user. But before you add a firewall policy, you can't just ask an LLM, hey, uh, it's like 20 prompts. Okay, is this user part of this group? Yes or no? No. Okay, which group is he part of? Do we have permissions? Do we have this? And nobody can write like this prompt sequence, which actually works because as the steps increase, the probabilities becomes exponentially at each step to handle. But then we are looking at these idea of agents, which are smart creatures, which have an orchestration engine, and you have trained them on your company use cases or workflows. So as a user, you just go and say, hey, add this user if he has permissions into firewall policy. And now the agent knows connected to your databases has the permissions engines. So it calls the API without hallucinating, checks who the users are. If that step happened, then this step happens, then this step happens. And in between uses the LLM as a validator or a glue to get the formats, the right format to call internal APIs. So people keep saying like the software is dead. It's not dead. We're finding new ways to use existing APIs through these intelligent creatures called large language models now. But in future, I'm expecting them to become more and more useful. And then this whole orchestration engine to come and give you more and more applications that can be handled with less and less effort. Because that's the train we are on, that we can do more with less. We have reduced it writing code to prompts, and now we are in a journey where we can take 100 or 1,000 prompts into a single prompt, and the rest is handled by LLM and is very tailored to do support use cases, security use cases, and that's what keeps me awake or excited.
Yeah, I'm excited about AI agent as well. And actually, as of today, as we were talking like a couple of days ago at the Dev Day for OpenAI, they just released like the Chat GPT. You can build your own basically custom GPT. I think it's going to be a weekend project for me to try something out. I have so many ideas, but yes, it's getting very excited. So then we have spent, at the beginning of the call, the session, you talk about how you have this cohort that you have taught, more than 100 PMs or aspiring PMs who wanted to be working in the AI and ML space. And then we spend, the past 45 minutes giving this master class on like the different components of the tech stack of the enterprise LLM. If we were to close out this session by looking at skills that PM more broadly or specifically AI PM should build in this AI empowered era, what will be some of the top skills or mindsets that you think a PM needs to have in order to not feel like they're being replaced by AI very soon? Yeah,
Yeah, I not sure like anybody with especially like intelligent or creative roles like product managers or even like software engineers. People find always better ways to use machines efficiently. As you are saying, in this world, we still have chip shortage. That means we need more efficient code, and these machines are not going to write more efficient code. They are going to write code that we have written. Humans will always be needed to innovate or push the boundaries, and same for PMs or creative jobs. So as a PM, right, what skills you need to have? I think you need to have three things, right? One is you need to have knowledge of what's going around. Like so much, right? You know that there was a dev day, there was agents. Now you can create agents. So knowing all this, right? Staying know-how of things. Second, using these as the boundaries has gone. Uh, the 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 bar or the getting started has gone so easy with these things. I would highly recommend every product manager out there to use these in your daily workflows. See the challenges, they don't work. They don't work beyond a point. They're very repetitive. They stop, and it's your responsibility. And the third step there is build them, build these use cases, deploy them. This helps you build your portfolio, see the challenges. We didn't get a chance to talk about responsible AI today at all, but there was another paper that went out which said take a GPT-4 model. They have put all these guardrails. You can't use it for like making a bomb or doing suicidal things or doing all that. You put $2, you fine tune the model by some little prompts and create a new version, and all those guardrails are gone. And we talked about that you need to do it in enterprise. So how are you going to handle that? Right, so these things will only come once you go and get your hand dirty. So that's the third stage. So first, read a lot, stay in know-how. Second, use the products. And third, build these. You don't need a lot of development muscle anymore. You can actually build an end-to-end app by doing front app and go out there and start evangelizing your app and start seeing problems. And then you have a whole cycle of you have problems, you are learning new information, you are using new products, and this kind of churn, which we do all the time. We do this Saturday sessions, which is free for anybody to join. I will drop a link to you so we can share this with your community, with the community. And please join us there, where we just take every Saturday, take new things, try to build something with that. And you can ask questions. I will be always there.
that's awesome. Yeah. Speaking of which, folks, if you have a question, again, drop in the chat and Mahesh will get back to you as a response as the comments. And also, thank you so much, Mahesh, for joining us. And it's a great masterclass. We'll summarize and synthesize in the newsletter that we sent out on Wednesday. So, folks, if you're not on the distribution list, make sure you go to the event details tab where you can see a link. And I will also link resources such as joining the Saturday community. Again, it's free resources. Why not? It's part of being staying in the know, right? To your first point about upskilling as a PM and PM working in the AI space. So thank you again. It's a pleasure to have you here, Mahesh. So I hope everybody learn a lot, just like me, and stay in a note for the newsletter for some of this recap, as well as future event updates. Looking forward to seeing many of you. We don't have programming next Friday because it's U.S. Thanksgiving, but then we will resume first week of December, and we'll have someone who were former, actually, Alexa AI PM, Mahesh, sort of your former colleague, to do another masterclass on conversational AI and the know-hows and the do's and don'ts. So today we focus on enterprise LLM. Again, really excited to have all of you and have Mahesh here. Again, any last minute question, drop them in the chat. And I look forward to continue to learning with you through the newsletter and in future sessions. And maybe join Mahesh's community one of these days. So thank you so much again.
Thanks, Shivi. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.